What's a handheld system without a super addictive puzzle game to lure you in? The Game Boy had the wildly successful Tetris, the Nintendo DS had Meteos, the PSP had Lumines, and the WonderSwan's attempt was Gunpey, a simple puzzle game named after the man who made the game it was based on and spearheaded the WonderSwan's hardware development, Gunpei Yokoi. Gunpei is a simple puzzle game where line fragments spawn inside of a 5x10 grid, and the player must swap vertically adjacent line fragments positions to form continuous lines from the left edge of the screen to the right. Contrary to popular belief, Gunpei is not an original game designed for the Bandai WonderSwan, but rather an adaptation of a previous project by Gunpei Yokoi's company, Koto Laboratory. Koto put out two different LCD gaming devices in the style of Nintendo's Game & Watch, which Yokoi also worked on while he worked there. One of them was a game called Heno Heno, released in 1997 and named after the protagonist of the game, whose role it was to flip two vertically adjacent tiles in order to form a continuous line from end to end of the screen within a 4x6 grid. Gunpei tweaks that formula by replacing the game's cursor character with a simple rectangle, and increasing the dimensions of the grid, but is otherwise the same game. As you've no doubt noticed, Gunpei is notable for being the only game in the WonderSwan launch lineup to be playable in the portrait orientation, which is a unique quirk of the hardware we wouldn't see returned to handheld gaming devices until the release of the Nintendo DS. When held in landscape, the left side of the console has two sets of directional buttons, one on top of each other. The bottom D-pad, labeled X, is used when playing games in landscape, alongside with the A and B action buttons. When held in portrait, the left D-pad, labeled Y, would be used for movement, and the right D-pad would function as the action buttons. Gunpei has a handful of modes available to the player. Endless is the self-explanatory endless mode you've grown to expect from similar puzzle games. Levels challenges you with clearing an increasing amount of panels to progress to the next stage. Puzzle mode puts you into a pre-made game board and makes you figure out how to clear the entire board. Story mode puts you up against the wanted characters from the opening cutscene and introduces a few more mechanics to spice things up a bit. There's also free mode, which honestly is more like a training mode for building complex networks of lines. This mode has no penalty for panels running over the top of the screen, and you can quit out at any time via the pause menu, something surprisingly missing from every other mode in the game. Multiplayer is also available if you've got a link cable and another buddy with a WonderSwan and a copy of the game. Overall, Gunpei is an addictive puzzle game, but not one that's particularly hard. For the first 10 minutes or so of Endless Mode, the pace is so slow that you're often waiting on the game more than actively moving any panels around. It takes about 15 minutes for the speed to start becoming a bit of a threat. The primary mechanics of the game are very simple, but there is some depth in how you choose to build your line across the grid. You can put forks along the line, and as long as they eventually converge again, you can add to the number of panels your line is made up of to maximize for score. That leaves you with the safe option of building the simplest lines across every time for 500 points, or the risk of building more complex ones that can get you something closer to, let's say, 3,200 points. Not many of the WonderSwan's original franchises have managed to live on beyond the WonderSwan's lifespan, but Gunpei did pretty well for itself. Aside from the two other Gunpei titles released on the WonderSwan, which we'll cover in future episodes, Gunpei saw releases on the PlayStation, arcade, and NTT Docomo cell phones. In 2006, Q Entertainment and Art Co. Limited worked on two remakes of Gunpei for the PSP and Nintendo DS respectively, and those were branded as Gunpei Rebirth in the Japanese market. These would be the only two versions of Gunpei to be released outside of Japan.